The blood on Ryder Jackson's shirt was as red as the dying sun that cast long shadows over McGill, Arizona territory. He slumped against his saddle on the dusty trail, miles outside of town, his hand pressed against the bullet wound in his side. His horse nickered nervously, sensing her rider's distress. Ryder had been riding for hours, determined to put distance between himself and the men who'd ambushed him. But blood loss and exhaustion were taking their toll. "Just a little further, Belle," he whispered to his mare, though he wasn't sure how much longer he could stay upright. The world was starting to spin, edges of his vision darkening. In that moment, as consciousness began to slip away, Ryder saw what looked like an angel, a woman with honey-colored hair standing beside a small wagon on the trail ahead. Penelope Grant had been gathering herbs when she spotted the wounded man on horseback. She'd come to McGill just 3 months ago to live with her aunt after her parents' passing, and already she'd seen enough trouble to last a lifetime in this untamed territory. But something about the stranger's slumped figure and the dark stain spreading across his shirt spurred her into action. "Sir, can you hear me?" she called, rushing forward as the man's horse came to a halt. The stranger's eyes, blue as a summer sky but clouded with pain, met hers for just a moment before he slipped sideways from his saddle. Penelope lunged forward, managing to break his fall somewhat, though they both ended up in the dust. "Lord Almighty," she gasped, examining the wound. "You've been shot." The man grimaced. "Noticed that myself," he managed through gritted teeth. "My aunt's home is just down this trail." "Can you stand if I help you?" With tremendous effort and Penelope's support, Ryder made it to his feet. She whistled for his horse, who obediently followed as Penelope guided the wounded stranger to her wagon. The short journey to Aunt Martha's homestead seemed endless, with the man's breath growing more labored by the minute. By the time they reached the small but well-kept cabin nestled against the hillside, Ryder was barely conscious. Aunt Martha, a widow with gray-streaked dark hair and hands toughened by years of frontier life, rushed out at Penelope's call. "Good heavens, child, who is this?" "A wounded traveler. He's been shot," Penelope explained as they half-carried, half-dragged him inside. "Put him on my bed," Martha instructed, already gathering supplies. "I'll heat water." The next hours passed in a blur of blood-soaked rags and whispered prayers. Martha had experience with gunshot wounds and unfortunate necessity in McGill, and together they managed to extract the bullet and clean the wound. Through it all, the stranger drifted in and out of consciousness, occasionally muttering names that meant nothing to them. It wasn't until dawn broke the next day that he fully regained consciousness. Penelope was dozing in a chair beside the bed when movement caught her attention. The man was studying her with those striking blue eyes, now clear and alert. "You saved my life," he said simply. "Aunt Martha did most of the work. She's quite skilled." Penelope poured water from a pitcher into a cup. "Can you drink?" He nodded, accepting her help to sit up slightly. After drinking, he settled back against the pillows, his face drawn with pain but composed. "Ryder Jackson," he offered. "Seems only fair you know who you're harboring, Penelope Grant, and you're not being harbored, you're being healed." She smiled slightly. "What happened to you, Mr. Jackson?" A shadow crossed his face. "Disagreement over cards. Must have been quite a game. Wasn't worth dying for." His gaze drifted to the window where morning light streamed in. "How long have I been here?" "Just one night. You've lost a lot of blood, but Aunt Martha says you're strong. The bullet didn't hit anything vital." "I'm obliged to you both." He shifted, wincing. "I should move on soon." "Don't want to bring trouble to your door." Penelope stood, hands on her hips. "The only place you're going is back to sleep. You try to stand now and you'll reopen that wound and undo all our work." Surprisingly, Ryder's mouth quirked in what might have been a smile. "Yes, madam." Martha entered with a tray of broth and bread. "Our patient's awake, I see. Good. You'll need your strength, young man." Over the following days, Ryder proved to be both a difficult and model patient. He followed Martha's instructions regarding his wound care but chafed at the confinement. By the third day, he was insisting on sitting in a chair by the window, watching the horizon with troubled eyes. "You expecting someone?" Penelope asked one afternoon as she brought him fresh coffee. "Always good to stay alert in this territory," he replied, not quite answering her question. "Are you running from the law, Mr. Jackson?" she asked directly. He turned to her, expression unreadable. "Would it matter if I was? It would matter what you'd done to earn their pursuit," she replied evenly. After a long moment, he shook his head. "I'm not running from the law, Miss Grant. Just some men who don't take kindly to losing. Card cheats who fancy themselves gunfighters." His hand unconsciously moved to his bandaged side. "They caught me unawares after I left town." "Which town?" "Tucson. I've been drifting north. Any particular destination?" Ryder's gaze returned to the window. "Nowhere specific. Just away." There was something in his voice that tugged at Penelope's heart, a loneliness she recognized. She'd felt that same hollow ache since her parents' passing 6 months ago, the feeling of being unmoored in the world. "Well, you're welcome here until you're healed," she said softly. That evening, Martha announced she needed to visit a neighbor whose child was ill. "I'll likely stay the night, Penny. You'll be all right with our guest." Penelope nodded, though she caught the concern in her aunt's eyes. Martha was worried about propriety, a young, unmarried woman alone with a strange man. But Ryder was in no condition to pose a threat, and Penelope had her father's old rifle if needed. After Martha left, an awkward silence fell. Ryder had made his way to the table for supper, moving stiffly but with growing strength. Penelope busied herself with the dishes, aware of his gaze following her movements. "You don't have to stay in here entertaining me," he said finally. "I'm sure you have better things to do." "Not really." She turned, drying her hands on her apron. "Besides, I'm curious about you." His eyebrows rose. "Not much to tell." "Everyone has a story, Mr. Jackson." "Ryder," he corrected. "Might as well use my given name if you're going to interrogate me," she smiled. "Fair enough." "And I'm Penelope, or Penny, as Aunt Martha calls me." He nodded, then winced as he shifted in his chair. "What brought you to this corner of the territory, Penelope? You don't strike me as someone born to frontier life." "I wasn't," she admitted, sitting across from him. "I grew up in Boston. My father was a professor at Harvard, my mother taught piano. They both died of influenza last winter." "I'm sorry," he said, and she could tell he meant it. "Aunt Martha is my father's sister. She's lived out here for 30 years. She wrote offering me a home, and I had nowhere else to go." Penelope glanced around the simple cabin. "It's different from city life, but I'm adjusting." "It's a hard country," Ryder observed. "Beautiful but unforgiving." "Like its people," she replied, studying him. He met her gaze steadily. "Some, perhaps." That night, Penelope was awakened by sounds of distress from the main room where Ryder slept on a pallet. She found him thrashing in the grip of a nightmare, his face contorted in pain that seemed more than physical. Kneeling beside him, she gently touched his shoulder. "Ryder, wake up. You're dreaming." He startled awake, hand automatically reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. For a moment, raw fear and grief were naked on his face before he recognized her. "Penelope," he breathed. "I'm sorry." "No need for apologies." She reached for the water pitcher. "Would you like a drink?" He nodded, sitting up carefully. After drinking, he leaned back against the wall, his breathing gradually steadying. "You want to talk about it?" she asked quietly. In the silver moonlight streaming through the window, his profile was sharp and haunted. Just ghosts, he said finally. Memories that won't stay buried, war memories. His gaze snapped to hers, surprised. My father had nightmares too, she explained. He served with the Union. As did I, Ryder said after a pause. The 7th Massachusetts Infantry. I was just 17 when I joined. That's very young to see such things. Too many boys did. He rubbed his face wearily. That was 13 years ago, but some nights it feels like yesterday. Is that why you wander? She asked gently. To outrun the memories, he gave a humorless laugh. Can't outrun what's inside your head, Miss Grant. But movement helps, makes it harder for ghosts to find purchase. They sat in companionable silence for a time, the night sounds of crickets and distant coyotes filtering through the cabin walls. My father found comfort in prayer, Penelope offered. He said speaking to God helped quiet the ghosts. Ryder's expression hardened. If there is a God, he abandoned us in those blood-soaked fields. I saw men pray fervently 1 minute and die screaming the next. Yet you survived. Not all of me, he looked away. I'm sorry if that offends your sensibilities. It doesn't, she assured him. Faith is a personal matter, but if you ever change your mind. I won't, he said flatly, but thank you for the concern. The next week brought gradual improvement to Ryder's condition. He began taking short walks outside, rebuilding his strength. Martha returned and, seeing his progress, grudgingly admitted he was healing well. Another week and you'll be fit to travel if you're careful, she told him. Penelope felt an unexpected pang at these words. She'd grown accustomed to Ryder's presence, his dry humor, his careful manners that hinted at a genteel upbringing, the thoughtful conversations they shared in the evenings. One afternoon, she found him examining her father's books, which she'd brought from Boston. His fingers traced the leather bindings with obvious appreciation. "You've read Thoreau?" she asked, noting the volume in his hand. "And Emerson, Hawthorne?" He smiled faintly. "My mother was determined her sons would be educated, despite our Kentucky farm being far from any proper school." "You have brothers," his smile faded. "Had two. Both younger." Penelope sensed the weight behind those simple words but didn't press. Instead, she asked, "What did you do after the war?" "Tried farming like my father, but the land felt confining." He replaced the book carefully. "Moved west, worked cattle drives, tried my hand at prospecting. Nothing stuck. And cards," she prompted. A hint of mischief touched his eyes. "I have a good memory and a talent for reading people. Cards pay better than most honest work." "Is it honest, though?" she challenged. "I don't cheat, if that's what you're asking, but I won't pretend it's a noble profession." He studied her. "Does that disappoint you?" "I try not to judge people by their occupations, Mr. Jackson. I find their character reveals itself in other ways." "And what has my character revealed to you thus far?" She met his gaze steadily. "That you're a man carrying heavy burdens. That despite your claims of selfishness, you've shown nothing but consideration while staying here. That you're educated but hiding it behind a drifter's persona." His expression was unreadable. "You see a great deal, Miss Grant. I was raised by observant people." Before he could respond, the sound of approaching horses drew their attention. Ryder tensed immediately, moving to the window with a fluidity that belied his recent injury. "Expecting visitors?" he asked, voice suddenly hard. "No." Penelope joined him, peering out. 3 riders were approaching, rough-looking men with guns prominently displayed. "Do you know them?" "No, but their type is familiar enough." He moved away from the window. "Where's your aunt?" "Visiting Mrs. Peterson. Her baby is due any day." Ryder nodded grimly. "My gun belt." "In the trunk by the door, but surely you're not." "I won't start trouble," he assured her, retrieving his revolver and checking it with practiced hands. "But best to be prepared." The riders reined in before the cabin. One, a heavy-set man with a bushy beard, called out, Hello, the house." Penelope stepped onto the porch, conscious of Ryder positioned just inside the doorway, out of sight but within earshot. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. "Looking for a man," the bearded one said. "Tall fella, dark hair, riding a bay mare, might be wounded." "Seen anyone like that? May I ask why you're looking for him?" she countered. The men exchanged glances. "He's wanted for murder in Tucson," the bearded man claimed. "We're bringing him in." "You don't look like lawmen," Penelope observed. A second rider, thin-faced with cold eyes, leaned forward. "Bounty hunters, madam. Now, have you seen this man or not?" Behind her, Penelope sensed Ryder's tension. She made a swift decision. "No, sir. No travelers have passed this way in over a week." The thin-faced man's eyes narrowed. "Mind if we look around? Check your barn." "I do mind," she replied firmly. "My aunt and I live alone, and she wouldn't approve of strange men searching our property without cause." "We have cause enough. Good day, gentlemen," she interrupted, her hand reaching for the door. "I wish you luck with your search elsewhere." She closed the door firmly and waited, heart pounding. After a tense minute, they heard the riders move off, muttering among themselves. Ryder holstered his gun, expression grim. "Those weren't bounty hunters." "I gathered that," she replied. "Are they the men who shot you?" He nodded. "I should leave. They'll be back." "Not today, they won't. They'll search elsewhere first." She touched his arm. "You're not fully healed. Riding now could kill you as surely as they would." "I won't bring danger to you and your aunt." "We're tougher than we look," she insisted. "At least wait until Martha returns. She'll know what to do." Martha, when she returned that evening, was pragmatic about the situation. "Those men sound like trouble, sure enough, but Penny's right, you're in no condition for hard riding. Besides, they've moved on for now." "For now," Ryder emphasized. "They'll return." "Then we'll deal with it when they do," Martha said firmly. "Meanwhile, I know Sheriff Wilson in McGill. He's a good man. I'll ride in tomorrow and inform him we've had suspicious visitors." "Don't mention me," Ryder requested. "Better he doesn't know I'm here." Martha studied him. "Are you running from the law, young man?" "No, madam, but lawmen tend to ask questions I'd rather not answer." "About the war," Penelope suggested quietly. Ryder's gaze flickered to her, then away. "Among other things." Martha sighed. "Very well. I won't mention you specifically, but I'm telling Wilson to keep an eye out for strangers causing trouble." That night, Penelope found Ryder sitting on the porch steps, staring at the star-filled sky. She settled beside him, drawing her shawl closer against the night chill. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked. "Too much on my mind." He glanced at her. "You should rest. No need for both of us to lose sleep." "I find the night peaceful," she countered. "In Boston, the city never truly sleeps. Here, there's a vastness to the silence." "It's deceptive," he said softly. "The wilderness is never silent if you know how to listen. Predators and prey, life and death, it's all happening in the dark." "Is that how you see the world? Predators and prey?" His mouth twisted. "I've seen enough to know it's not far wrong." "What about beauty, kindness?" she challenged. "Are those not also part of the world?" "They exist," he conceded. "But they're fragile, easily destroyed. Or perhaps more resilient than you think." She hugged her knees. "My mother used to say that seeking beauty in darkness is an act of defiance." "Your mother sounds like a wise woman." "She was." Penelope smiled at the memory. "She found beauty everywhere, even in her final days when she was in terrible pain. She never stopped believing in goodness." Ryder was quiet for a long moment. "I believed once," he admitted, voice low, "before Antietam. Before I saw my best friend blown apart beside me." Penelope's heart ached at the raw pain in his voice. "I'm so sorry, Ryder." "I prayed that night," he continued, as if he needed to speak the words. "Covered in his blood, I prayed harder than I ever had. For what, I don't even know, Mercy, understanding, some sign that it all meant something. His laugh was hollow. There was only silence. "Sometimes silence is the only answer we get," she said gently. "It doesn't mean no one's listening." It was enough for me. His eyes, when they met hers, held a deep weariness. "I haven't prayed since, won't ever again." "Then I'll pray for you," she said simply. "Until you can." He stared at her, clearly startled by the offer. "Why would you do that?" "Because I believe everyone deserves someone speaking to God on their behalf, especially those who can't or won't do it themselves." "You're a strange woman, Penelope Grant," he said, but there was no mockery in his tone, only wonder. "So I've been told," she replied with a smile. The following days settled into an uneasy rhythm. Martha returned from McGill with news that Sheriff Wilson would keep watch for the suspicious men, but they hadn't been seen in town. Ryder continued to heal, now helping with chores around the homestead despite Martha's protests. Penelope found herself watching him when he wasn't looking, the careful precision with which he split wood, mindful of his healing wound, the gentleness he showed to their livestock, the quiet concentration when he repaired the broken porch step. There was a steadiness to him that belied his drifter's existence, and she wondered what had truly set him on his wandering path. She also noticed how he sometimes watched her when she sang while hanging laundry, or when she read aloud in the evenings. His gaze held a warmth that made her cheeks flush and her heart beat faster. One afternoon, while Martha napped, Penelope found Ryder examining her father's rifle. "Fine weapon," he commented. "Well maintained." "My father taught me to shoot and care for it," she explained. "He said a woman alone should know how to protect herself." He was right. Ryder handed her the rifle. "Though I hope you never need to use it." "As do I." She set it carefully against the wall. "Ryder, may I ask you something personal?" He tensed slightly but nodded. "You spoke of brothers. What happened to them?" Pain flashed across his face. "Thomas died at Petersburg near the end of the war. He was just 16, lied about his age to enlist. And Michael." He swallowed hard. "Typhoid 2 years after the war. He was never strong." "And your parents?" "Father died before the war, farming accident. Mother held on until 68, then her heart gave out. Some might say it broke from losing 2 sons." He looked away. "I was in Colorado by then. Didn't make it home in time for her funeral." "Is that why you wander? Because there's nothing to return to?" His eyes, when they met hers, were startlingly vulnerable. "Maybe. Or maybe I don't deserve roots anymore." "Everyone deserves a place to belong, Ryder." Before he could respond, the sound of a galloping horse interrupted them. They hurried to the window to see a young boy racing toward the cabin on a lathered pony. "That's Jimmy Peterson," Penelope said, recognizing their neighbor's son. "Something must be wrong." They met the boy outside. "Miss Penny," he gasped. "Ma says to fetch Miss Martha quick. The baby's coming early and something's wrong." "Aunt Martha just left for town," Penelope explained, her stomach sinking. "She won't be back until tomorrow." Jimmy's face crumpled. "Ma's in awful pain, Miss Penny. Pa's beside himself." Penelope made a swift decision. "I'll come. I've assisted Aunt Martha before." "I'm coming too," Ryder said, already moving toward the barn. "I'll saddle your horse." Despite Jimmy's protests that they hurry, Ryder insisted on taking time to prepare properly. He helped Penelope gather Martha's medical supplies and birthing kit, then saddled both their horses with swift efficiency. "You shouldn't be riding yet," Penelope protested. "Your wound is healing well enough," he cut her off. "I'm not letting you go alone." The urgency in his eyes silenced her arguments. They set off at a brisk pace, following Jimmy across the rolling terrain to the Peterson homestead, a small cabin with a newly built barn a few miles away. The scene inside was grim. Sarah Peterson lay on the bed, face gray with pain, while her husband John paced anxiously. two small children huddled in a corner, eyes wide with fear. "Thank God you're here, Penny," John said. "Sarah's been laboring since dawn, but something's not right. The baby won't come." Penelope rolled up her sleeves. "I need hot water and clean linens. Ryder, would you take the children outside?" To her surprise, Ryder shook his head. "I've helped birth calves and foals. I may be of use here." To John he said, "Let's give the ladies privacy. We'll heat water and keep the little ones occupied." Grateful, Penelope turned to Sarah, examining her as Martha had taught her. The baby was indeed positioned wrong, breech, Martha would call it. Sarah's strength was flagging, her contractions weakening instead of strengthening. "Sarah, I need to try turning the baby," Penelope explained, fighting to keep her voice calm despite her racing heart. "It will hurt, but it may save you both." Sarah nodded weakly, beyond fear. For the next hour, Penelope worked with desperate concentration, applying the techniques she'd seen Martha use. Outside, she could hear Ryder's deep voice telling stories to the Peterson children, somehow keeping them distracted from their mother's occasional cries of pain. Just when Penelope began to fear all was lost, the baby shifted. "I can feel the head," she exclaimed. "Sarah, when the next pain comes, I need you to push with all your might." 10 minutes later, the squalling cry of a newborn filled the cabin. "A girl," Penelope announced, tears streaming down her face as she cleaned the tiny infant. "A beautiful little girl." After ensuring both mother and baby were stable, Penelope emerged from the cabin to find Ryder sitting on a log with a child on each knee, all three intently focused on a wooden figure he was carving. He looked up, his expression tense. "How are they?" "Both alive and well," she assured him. "A daughter." The relief on his face was palpable. Rising, he set the children down gently. "Go tell your pa he can see your ma and new sister now. But quietly, remember." As the children scampered inside, Ryder approached Penelope. Without warning, he pulled her into a tight embrace. "You did it," he murmured against her hair. Too exhausted to be surprised, she leaned into his strength, allowing herself this moment of comfort. "I was so afraid," she confessed, "if anything had gone wrong. But it didn't." He drew back slightly, his hands still on her shoulders. "You were magnificent." Something in his gaze made her breath catch. For one suspended moment, she thought he might kiss her and realized with startling clarity that she wanted him to. But he stepped back, the moment passing. They stayed until Sarah was resting comfortably, and John had composed himself enough to care for his family. On the ride home, Penelope found herself unusually silent, processing not only the intense experience of the birth, but also her reaction to Ryder's embrace. "You're very quiet," he observed as they approached Martha's cabin in the gathering twilight. "Just tired," she said, though it was only partially true. "And thinking about Sarah and her baby." "You saved them both," he said. "Not many would have had the courage or skill." "I only knew what to do because of Aunt Martha's teaching. Knowledge is one thing, applying it under pressure is another entirely." He glanced at her. "You have a healer's hands, Penelope." The simple compliment warmed her more than it should have. "Thank you for coming with me. For helping with the children." "They're good kids," he said. "Reminds me of growing up with my brothers, always underfoot, full of questions." "You're good with them," she observed. "Have you ever thought of having a family of your own?" The question hung in the air between them as they reached the cabin and dismounted. Ryder busied himself with the horses, not meeting her eyes. "That's not in the cards for someone like me," he finally said. "A drifter doesn't make a good husband or father." "You don't have to be a drifter forever," she pointed out, following him into the barn. He hung the saddles carefully before turning to her. In the lantern light, his expression was solemn. "What would you have me be, Penelope?" The directness of his question caught her off guard. "I I would have you be whatever brings you peace. And if I don't know what that is anymore, she stepped closer, emboldened by the events of the day and the intensity in his eyes, then perhaps you need to stop running long enough to find out. His gaze dropped to her lips, and for a heartbeat she thought he might close the distance between them. Instead, he took a deliberate step back. "We should get inside," he said, his voice rougher than usual. "You need rest after today." Martha returned the next morning, full of praise for Penelope's handling of the birth crisis. "Sarah Peterson sent word to town thanking you both," she told them over breakfast. "Said she's naming the baby Penelope Rose." "That's unnecessary," Penelope protested, though secretly touched. "It's well-deserved," Ryder said. "Your aunt has taught you well." Martha studied him over her coffee cup. "John Peterson also mentioned how good you were with his youngsters, said you carved them toys and told stories that kept them from being frightened." Ryder shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "Children shouldn't have to worry about adult matters." "No, they shouldn't," Martha agreed, "but few men have the patience or kindness to distract them in such situations." She set down her cup decisively. "Now I spoke with Sheriff Wilson again. No sign of those men you're concerned about, but he's keeping watch." "I should still move on," Ryder said. "I've imposed on your hospitality long enough." "Nonsense," Martha declared. "Your wound's still healing and winter's coming on. Bad time to be on the trail." "I've wintered in worse conditions." "And nearly died from a bullet because of it," Penelope pointed out. "There's no shame in accepting shelter, Ryder." He looked between the two women, clearly torn. "I can't stay indefinitely." "Stay through Christmas," Martha suggested. "By then you'll be fully healed and spring travel will be safer." "Christmas is more than 2 months away," he protested. "And McGill gets mighty cold before then," Martha countered. "Besides, I could use a strong back around here. Consider it payment for room and board." Ryder glanced at Penelope, something unspoken passing between them. "If you're certain I won't be a burden." "Decided then," Martha said briskly, rising to clear the dishes. "You'll stay until Christmas at least." As autumn deepened, Ryder became an invaluable help around the homestead. He repaired the roof, reinforced the barn, and chopped enough firewood to last the winter. The bullet wound healed cleanly, leaving only a puckered scar as evidence of his close call. More significantly, he began to open up more about his past. One evening, as they sat before the fire while Martha dozed in her rocker, he told Penelope about his childhood in Kentucky, his father's small tobacco farm, his mother's determination that her sons would be educated despite their rural poverty. "She'd been a schoolteacher before marrying my father," he explained. "Every evening, no matter how tired she was from farm work, she'd teach us reading, mathematics, history, made us recite poetry, debate issues of the day." "She sounds remarkable," Penelope said. "She was." His smile held fond remembrance. "She wanted me to become a lawyer or professor, was crushed when I enlisted instead." "You were young, eager to prove yourself." "Eager for glory," he corrected bitterly. "Like most fools who'd never seen war, and after, when you didn't return home." He stared into the flames. "I tried, twice, but everything was different, or I was. The farm felt like a cage. My mother's disappointment was palpable, so I left again, promising to send money when I could." "Did you?" "Yes, though not as often as I should have." His expression darkened. "When word came of her passing, I was in Leadville, chasing silver rumors. Took me 3 weeks to get home. By then, she was in the ground beside my father and brothers." "I'm sorry, Ryder," she said softly. "The farm had been sold for debts. Nothing left of my family but graves and memories." He met her gaze. "That's when I truly became a drifter, nothing to anchor me anymore." "And now?" she asked, barely daring to breathe. His eyes, reflecting the firelight, held emotions she couldn't fully decipher. Now I'm not sure what I am. The weeks passed with increasing comfort between them. Martha, observant as always, noticed the growing connection between her niece and their guest, but said nothing directly. She did, however, begin finding reasons for them to work together, sending them to McGill for supplies, asking them to repair the chicken coop, suggesting they gather the last of the fall apples together. Penelope found herself looking forward to these shared tasks, to the easy conversation and companionable silences. Ryder proved to be not only capable but thoughtful, often anticipating needs before they were voiced. He had a dry wit that emerged more frequently as he became comfortable in their home, and occasionally she caught glimpses of the man he might have been had war not claimed so much of him. In late November, the first significant snowfall blanketed the landscape. Penelope awoke to find Ryder already outside, clearing paths to the barn and well. Through the window, she watched him work, his breath clouding in the frigid air, his movements sure and steady. Something warm unfurled in her chest at the sight, a feeling that both thrilled and frightened her with its intensity. That afternoon, Martha announced she was going to help with preparations for the upcoming Thanksgiving celebration at the McGill church. "I'll be staying in town tonight with Widow Simmons," she told them. "Too much to do to make the trip back and forth." After she left, a self-conscious awkwardness settled between Penelope and Ryder. Though they'd often been alone together before, this felt different, somehow more deliberate on Martha's part, more significant. "I could sleep in the barn," Ryder offered as evening approached, "for propriety's sake." "Don't be ridiculous," Penelope replied. "It's freezing out there." "Aunt Martha trusts us both to behave appropriately." He nodded, though a certain tension remained in his shoulders. They prepared supper together, moving around the kitchen with practiced coordination. Afterward, as snow began falling again outside, they settled before the fire with cups of hot cider. "May I ask you something personal?" Ryder said suddenly. She nodded, curious. "Why haven't you married? A woman of your intelligence and beauty, surely you've had offers." The unexpected compliment made her flush. "There was someone once, David Whitley, a colleague of my father's. We were informally engaged. What happened? He couldn't understand why I needed to come west after my parents died. He wanted me to stay in Boston to continue in the life we'd planned." She sipped her cider, remembering. "But after losing them, I couldn't bear the empty house, the pitying glances, the constant reminders. So you chose a new start." "Yes, David called it running away." "Perhaps it was," she acknowledged, "but it felt like the only way to breathe again." "I understand that," Ryder said quietly, "more than most would." "I know you do," she met his gaze. "That's why it's so easy to talk to you. You understand without judgment." He set his cup aside, his expression growing serious. "Penelope, I need to tell you something." Her heart quickened. "Yes. When Christmas comes, I should move on. Not because I want to," he added quickly, seeing her face fall, "but because it's the right thing to do." "Why?" she asked, setting her own cup down. "If you're happy here, that's just it," he interrupted. "I am happy here, happier than I've been in years, and that's dangerous." "How can happiness be dangerous?" He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. "Because I'm beginning to want things I can't have, to imagine a life I don't deserve." "What do you want, Ryder?" she pressed, moving to sit beside him on the hearth rug. His eyes, when they met hers, held such longing that her breath caught. "A home," he said simply. "Roots, purpose." His voice dropped. "You." The confession hung between them, irretrievable. "You have me," she whispered. "If you want me." For one suspended moment, neither moved. Then Ryder's hand came up to cup her cheek, his touch gentle as if she might shatter. "I don't deserve you." "That's not for you to decide," she countered, covering his hand with hers. "And I believe you deserve happiness more than most." Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned forward until his lips met hers. The kiss was tender, tentative at first, then deepening as she responded. His arms encircled her, drawing her closer, and she felt the rapid beat of his heart matching her own. When they finally parted, breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that since the day you saved my life." "What took you so long?" she teased. His smile was rueful. "Fear, doubt, the certainty that a wanderer has no right to love a woman like you. And now I'm still afraid," he admitted, "but more afraid of leaving than staying." Outside, the snow fell harder, cloaking the world in silent white. Inside, by the fire's warm glow, they talked until dawn of hopes and fears, of possible futures, of the unexpected path that had brought them together. When Martha returned the next day, she took one look at them and nodded, as if confirming something long suspected. "Well," she said briskly, hanging up her coat, "I suppose we'll be making plans then." "Plans?" Ryder echoed, casting a nervous glance at Penelope. "Don't play the fool, young man, it doesn't suit you." Martha fixed him with a stern but kind gaze. "I'm not blind, nor am I opposed. But I expect honorable intentions toward my niece." Ryder straightened. "My intentions are entirely honorable, Mrs. Grant." "Good." Martha smiled. "Then we understand each other." 2 days later, Sheriff Wilson rode out to their homestead with concerning news. "Those men you asked about, Martha, they've been spotted in McGill, asking questions about a wounded stranger." Ryder's face hardened. "Did they say why they're looking for this man? Claim he's wanted for cheating at cards, then shooting a man when confronted." Wilson's shrewd eyes assessed Ryder. "Don't suppose you know anything about that, Mr. Jackson." "I know I never shot a man over cards," Ryder replied evenly. "These men ambushed me on the trail out of Tucson, took my money and left me for dead." Wilson nodded slowly. "That's more in line with what I've heard about them. Nolan brothers and their cousin, bad reputation in 3 territories." "Are they still in town?" Penelope asked anxiously. "For now. I've warned them against causing trouble." Wilson shifted in his saddle. "But they're the type to hold grudges, if they learn you're here, Mr. Jackson." "I understand," Ryder said grimly. "Thank you for the warning, Sheriff." After Wilson left, Ryder paced the cabin, his expression troubled. "I should leave, draw them away from here." "Absolutely not," Martha declared. "That's exactly what they want to get you alone." "Better than bringing danger to your door," he argued. "Ryder, please," Penelope touched his arm. "Sheriff Wilson knows their trouble, he'll watch them. And if they decide to come looking anyway," he covered her hand with his own, "I won't risk either of you getting hurt because of me." Martha snorted. "Young man, I've lived in this territory for 30 years, faced down Apache raids, claimed jumpers, and worse. 3 lowlifes don't frighten me." "They should," Ryder said seriously. "Men like that don't hesitate to hurt women." A tense silence followed his words. Finally, Martha sighed. "Very well. If you're determined to face them, do it on your terms, not theirs. Go to McGill, speak with Wilson again. Let the law handle this." "The law has limited reach out here," Ryder pointed out. "Then create witnesses," Penelope suggested. "Confront them publicly, where they can't simply gun you down." Ryder considered this, then nodded slowly. "There's sense in that." The following day, they rode into McGill together. The small town was busier than usual with preparations for Thanksgiving and the coming Christmas season. People hurried between the general store and other businesses, while a group of men worked on erecting a large pine tree in front of the church. They found Sheriff Wilson at his office, discussing the situation. He confirmed the Nolan brothers and their cousin were still in town, staying at the saloon. "They're careful not to break any laws I can arrest them for," Wilson explained. "But they're making people nervous, asking questions about strangers, especially wounded ones." "I want to end this," Ryder said firmly. "One way or another." Wilson studied him. "You planning to shoot them?" "No, but I won't let them threaten me or the Grants any longer." "Fair enough." Wilson strapped on his gun belt. "Let's pay them a visit." The saloon was crowded despite the early hour. Heads turned as Wilson entered with Ryder and the Grant women. Penelope spotted the men immediately, three rough-looking individuals at a corner table, watching the newcomers with predatory interest. The bearded one, clearly the eldest, rose slowly, recognition dawning on his face. "Well, well, if it ain't our card-playing friend." "Nalan," Ryder acknowledged, his stance casual but alert. "Still telling lies about me, I see." "Ain't lies when a man cheats, then shoots poor Eddie Miller when called on it." Nalan's hand hovered near his gun. "That's not how I recall it," Ryder countered. "I recall winning fairly, then being ambushed by you three on the trail, left for dead after you took my money." The saloon had gone silent, everyone watching the confrontation. Wilson positioned himself where he could see all three Nalans. "I've made inquiries," he announced. "Got telegraphs from Tucson. No one there claims Jackson shot anybody. But there are plenty of stories about the Nalan brothers robbing travelers." The thin-faced one, the cousin, Penelope guessed, spat on the floor. "Lawmen stick together. Don't mean nothing." "Means you're lying," Martha said clearly. "And this town doesn't welcome liars or thieves." "Stay out of this, old woman," the bearded Nalan growled. "This is between men." Ryder's voice hardened. "Show some respect. This lady and her niece saved my life after you cowards shot me in the back." "Should have made sure you were dead," the third brother muttered. "That's enough," Wilson intervened. "I'm giving you boys one chance to leave McGill peacefully. Leave today, don't come back, and we'll forget this unpleasantness." The bearded Nalan laughed. "Or what? You gonna arrest us for talking? We ain't broken no laws." "Attempted murder is a law," Penelope pointed out. "I treated Mr. Jackson's wound. The bullet entered from behind a coward's shot. And I've got 6 witnesses who saw you three following Jackson out of Tucson after he won at cards," Wilson added. "Strong circumstantial case." The Nalans exchanged uneasy glances, clearly not expecting this level of resistance. The bearded one tried a different approach. "Look, there's been a misunderstanding. We just wanted what was owed us." "Nothing was owed you," Ryder said flatly. "I won fairly. You couldn't accept losing." "Here's what's going to happen," Wilson continued. "You three are going to finish your drinks, pack your belongings, and ride out of McGill. Never come back, or I lock you up and wire for the federal marshal." For a tense moment, it seemed the Nalans might choose violence. Penelope held her breath, acutely aware of Ryder positioned slightly in front of her, shielding her with his body. Finally, the bearded Nalan shrugged. "Ain't worth the trouble. This backwater ain't got nothing worth staying for anyway." "1 hour," Wilson warned. "Then I start making arrests." The confrontation ended without bloodshed, though the Nalans departed with venomous glares and muttered threats. Wilson assigned 2 deputies to ensure they left town and didn't double back. "You handled that well," the sheriff told Ryder afterward. "Most men would have reached for their gun." "I've seen enough killing," Ryder replied quietly, "and I had too much to lose." His gaze, when it met Penelope's, held such tenderness that her heart swelled. On the ride home, a weight seemed lifted from his shoulders. He even laughed when Martha recounted how the youngest Nalan had nearly fallen off his chair when she'd called him out. "You're quite formidable, Mrs. Grant," he told her with genuine admiration. "Frontier living teaches a woman to stand her ground," she replied. "And I meant what I said. This town doesn't welcome their kind." That evening, as they sat around the table enjoying Martha's venison stew, Ryder cleared his throat. "I've been thinking about something Sheriff Wilson said." Both women looked at him expectantly. "He mentioned the livery stable owner is looking to sell, moving to California for his health." Martha nodded. "Samuel's lungs have been troubling him for years. His doctor recommended a drier climate." "I've saved most of my winnings over the years," Ryder continued. "Never had much reason to spend them. I think I might have enough to buy the business." Penelope's eyes widened. "You're considering staying in McGill permanently if I'd be welcome." His gaze held her steadily. "I know horses. Spent enough time working with them on cattle drives in mining camps. It's honest work with potential to grow." "It sounds perfect for you," she said warmly. "There's more," he added, a hint of nervousness in his voice. If I establish myself here." He took a deep breath. "Penelope, would you consider becoming my wife?" Though she'd anticipated the question might come eventually, the directness of it still took her breath away. "Yes," she answered without hesitation. "Yes, I would." Martha huffed a laugh. "About time you asked, young man. I was beginning to think I'd need to lock you two in the root cellar until you came to your senses." The church in McGill was decorated with pine boughs and red ribbons for the Christmas Eve wedding. Despite the short notice, it seemed the entire town had turned out for the ceremony. Samuel Peterson, recovered enough to attend with his wife and their new daughter, had already completed the sale of the livery stable to Ryder. The couple would live in the comfortable rooms above the stable office until spring, when they planned to build a small house on land adjoining Martha's property. As Penelope prepared in a side room of the church, Martha adjusted her veil. "Your parents would be proud," she said softly. "You found a good man despite his rough edges." "Because of his rough edges in some ways," Penelope replied. "He understands loss and renewal better than most." "He still doesn't pray," Martha observed. It wasn't a criticism, merely a statement. "No," Penelope acknowledged. "But he respects that I do. And sometimes at night I catch him listening when I say my prayers, not mockingly, thoughtfully." Martha squeezed her hand. "Faith returns in its own time if it's meant to. You've given him something to believe in again, even if it's not God yet." The ceremony was simple but moving. Ryder, standing tall and straight in a new suit, looked at Penelope as if she were a miracle as she walked down the aisle on Sheriff Wilson's arm. His voice was unwavering as he recited his vows, promising to cherish and protect her all the days of his life. After the ceremony, the town gathered in the church hall for a celebration. There was music, dancing, and enough food to feed twice their number. Ryder, though clearly uncomfortable with being the center of attention, handled the congratulations and well wishes with grace. Late in the evening, as the festivities continued, he drew Penelope outside into the clear, cold night. Stars blazed overhead in a velvet sky, and their breath clouded in the frigid air. "Happy?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her. "Completely," she assured him, leaning into his embrace. "And you, more than I ever thought possible," he kissed her forehead. "I keep waiting to wake up back on that dusty trail with a bullet in my side." "This is real," she murmured. "We're real." For a long moment they stood in comfortable silence, listening to the distant sounds of celebration inside. Then Ryder spoke, his voice hesitant. "I heard you this morning, praying." She looked up at him. "Does it bother you?" "No." He seemed to be choosing his words carefully. "I've been thinking about what you said that night on the porch, about praying for me until I could pray for myself." "I meant it," she said softly. "I still do, I know." His arms tightened around her, "and I'm beginning to think. Maybe someday I might try again. Not now," he added quickly. "The wounds are still too deep. But someday." Penelope felt tears spring to her eyes at the admission. "That's all I could ask for." "You've given me back something I thought was lost forever," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Hope, purpose, a future worth living for." "And you've given me the same," she replied, reaching up to touch his face. "We heal each other." As the church bell tolled midnight, signaling Christmas Day, Ryder Jackson bent to kiss his bride beneath the star-filled sky. The wounded cowboy who had once refused to pray had found something to believe in after all, not in divine providence, perhaps, but in the healing power of love and in the promise of tomorrow. 5 years later, Ryder stood on the porch of their home, watching Penelope chase their 3-year-old son Robert through the spring wildflowers that dotted their land. Their infant daughter Sarah slept peacefully in his arms, her tiny fingers curled around his thumb. The livery stable had prospered under his care, expanding to include a small horse breeding operation that was gaining reputation throughout the territory. Penelope had established herself as a skilled midwife, training under Martha until the older woman's passing 2 years earlier. Life wasn't without challenges. The Arizona Territory remained a harsh land that demanded resilience and hard work. But they faced each day together, their bond strengthened by the trials they'd overcome. As the sun began to set, Penelope gathered Robert and returned to the porch, her face flushed and happy. "Someone's ready for his supper," she said, ruffling their son's dark hair. "As am I," Ryder replied with a smile. "It's been a long day." That evening, after the children were asleep, they sat together on the porch swing, watching the stars appear one by one. Penelope rested her head on his shoulder, and he held her close, marveling as he often did at the journey that had brought them together. "I checked the new foal today," she mentioned. "The one from that wild mare you gentled last year. She's strong like her mother." "Takes after you then," he teased. She laughed softly. "I was thinking she takes after both of us, wild but willing to trust once given reason to." Ryder kissed the top of her head, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. "Have I told you today how much I love you?" "You have," she replied, "but I never tire of hearing it." Later, as they prepared for bed, he paused by the window, looking out at the moon-silvered landscape. Penelope came to stand beside him, following his gaze. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "That I'm grateful," he said simply. "For this life. For you." He hesitated, then added quietly, "I prayed today." She looked up at him, surprise and joy illuminating her face. "You did?" he nodded. Nothing formal, just gratitude. For the first time in 20 years, it didn't feel hollow. Tears shimmered in her eyes as she reached for his hand. "I told you I'd pray for you until you could," she reminded him. "I never stopped believing that day would come." "Your faith was stronger than my doubt," he acknowledged. "It always has been." As they settled into bed, arms entwined, Ryder reflected on the long journey from that wounded, bitter man on the trail to the person he'd become. The scars remained both physical and spiritual, but they no longer defined him. He had found his place in the world at last. Not through wandering, but by standing still long enough to let healing begin. And in Penelope's steadfast love, in their children's laughter, in the community that had embraced them both, he had found something worth believing in again. The wounded cowboy who had once refused to pray now offered his own silent thanks each night for second chances, for renewed faith, and for the woman who had never stopped praying for him until he could pray for himself.